A storm that starts out as a blustery day swells and joins with others to smother the planet. A blood-red dirt cloud races and rages, obscuring the sun. Twisting pillars of powder-fine dust blast the surface, spinning at over 160 kilometers an hour. It's just another day on Mars, but this alien weather would suffocate life on Earth. The wildest weather lies in outer space. On planets like Mars, where high winds fill the air with talcum-fine powder. It's a world overwhelmed by dust and ruled by dust storms that can choke the red planet for months. So imagine what would happen if a Martian dust storm hit Earth. Clues about the Martian storm's earthly version are found in unlikely settings.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a rabbit on the track. Oh yeah.
More than 3 kilometers above sea level in the Swiss Alps, William Broughton is on the track of a dusty mystery. On Darwin's legendary voyage of the Beagle, almost 200 years ago, a fine reddish-brown dust fell on the ship. She was far out in the Atlantic, nearly 700 kilometers from Africa. The dust made the atmosphere hazy for weeks, and Darwin was intrigued. He later uncovered 15 separate accounts of similar mysterious dust falls on ships far out in the ocean, dust that hurt the crew's eyes, dirtied everything on board, and obscured the horizon. He suspected it was coming from Africa, a cloud of dust traveling around the world. Darwin's observations resonate with Broughton because he has also found African dust in the unlikely setting of the Alps.
Very often in spring here you can wake up in the morning and your car is covered in, well, sand more than dust, very fine sand. It looks as if you'd been parked on the beach on one of the coasts of America and you'd gone out after a nice day of surfing and your car is covered in sand.
Broughton is a dust expert, a microbiologist in Geneva. The area's crisp snow and alpine ice make a perfect living laboratory for his work.
This is an air sampler. We have to change it so we can collect another sample.
His isolated research station is high above human contamination, a pristine environment where dust is captured straight from the atmosphere.
At this altitude, there's very little contamination. So here, and only here, because of the research station's facilities, we're able to collect dust under conditions that get as close as possible to sterile.
Forensic analysis matches the samples with dust from other places.
We can make a kind of a fingerprint. We can fingerprint this dust, match it to fingerprints of dust from other places, and say, this one has the same fingerprint as dust that starts in Chad, therefore it came from Chad. It's an event that occurs here in spring and in autumn, every year almost in the Alps, and in the lower regions of Switzerland too, you will see the snow covered in dust. It can be red, it can be orange, and so on, showing its African origins as well.
Dust from Chad in north-central Africa, trapped in this alpine setting, just one of its many destinations around the world. In the mid-90s, scientists using satellite data discovered just how much dust could travel the globe. Sophisticated weather tracking technologies spotted a mass of dust 700 kilometers across. It was a colossal dust cloud that crossed the Atlantic in less than a week. A phenomenon our blue planet shared with another, the red planet, Mars. When the first pictures from Mars were received in 1971 from Mariner 9, there was little to see. Mars was consumed by a dust storm. The storm raged for a month, then abated to reveal a lifeless desert world. Martian storms can start anywhere on its surface because everywhere is dusty. But on Earth, much of the dust in our atmosphere comes from one valley in north-central Africa. It's the dustiest place on Earth, the Bodele Depression in Chad, in the Sahara. Every day, the Bodele produces more than 600,000 tons of dust. The steep sides of its valley act like a giant funnel, channeling dust up into the atmosphere, where easterly trade winds spew it around the world. But a Martian storm starting here might churn up millions of tons of dust, a month's worth in a single day. A Martian dust storm would kill life on Earth. But dust from the Bodele supports life on our planet. The Amazon relies on nutrient-rich dust from Africa, over half of it from the Bodele, about 18 million tons a year. So if life on Earth depends on dust from Africa, we need to understand the mechanics of its transport, in case it ever breaks down. The scientific holy grail is how the dust gets off the ground in the first place.
They don't come to us, we have to go to them. The first time I saw one, I was pretty scared.
Matt Baum is a research scientist with the Planetary Science Institute. He's working on a NASA-funded project with PSI's Steve Metzger, a planetary geomorphologist. They're in the Mojave Desert outside Las Vegas, chasing mysterious phenomena that the Navajo Indians traditionally think of as malevolent forces. Natso-Oldisi, better known to science as dust devils.
Okay, we've got a plane in the air with thermal and visible cameras. Wind sensors, pressure sensors. We've got my direct sampling of the truck with all kinds of pressure and temperature. We've got a little remote rapid rover. There's a LiDAR truck. There's a bunch of weather stations surrounding the whole area trying to get boundary layer, three-dimensional winds and its turbulence. Measure wind speed and direction from, a kilometer away. We're trying to study every aspect of this all at once, from every angle we can.
In 1997, Metzger was a doctoral student at the University of Nevada in Reno. It was the year Pathfinder touched down on Mars, and Metzger soon spotted something in the pictures it sent back. Columns were visible on the Martian horizon, dust devils that could be seen clearly in subsequent footage. They were just like their earthly siblings, but on a massive scale. Whenever dust storms are observed on Mars, dust devils are often present, leaving long, dark, telltale trails on the planet's dusty surface.
It looks like a tornado, so instinctively you're thinking, it's a tornado. Everyone feels pretty embarrassed after they crouch down and hide the first time. Not everyone does that. So the Dasher rig has pressure sensors at the ground, the mid-level, and up top. We've got wind speed at all 3 locations. Got a complete weather station here. This is a infrared thermometer, and its goal is to look at a really dusty dust devil and see the temperature of the dust in midair, which is surprisingly hard to measure temperature fast. In a hostile environment like this, it has to survive all kinds of rough stuff. Alrighty, I'm gonna go for this one to the west here.
Temperatures on Mars are much colder than the desert, and the red planet's air is much thinner. But it's the temperature differential between ground and air that fuels dust devils on both planets.
That was waypoint 79, a direct hit, 1 meter wide. A real nice one due north, but way off grid. Yeah, way off grid.
The team wants to understand the physics and meteorology that underpins dust devils. If they can work out the devil's mechanics, it could also reveal its function.
We have giant dust storms on Mars, but in between those dust storms, the atmosphere is still really dusty. And there's no real reason why that should be the case. So we think dust devils are that missing link. They're like the workhorse of the Martian climate, keeping that atmosphere dusty at all times.
They're tracking wind speeds and directions, temperature and humidity, atmospheric pressure, and the amount of dust in a devil.
We're really trying to study this from every possible angle because we understand some things and we're using that to test the models to explain dust devil activity. And there's other stuff we don't yet understand or we haven't yet discovered or seen. So we're trying to do everything we can to find out what we know and what we don't know.
The heaviest particles, the large sand grains and clumps of earth, they stay near the bottom. That's why it looks most dusty there. But the very fine dust gets caught up in that upwelling column where the wind speeds are moving upwards. And that's why you can see this fine column up at the top there. And you see near the bottom, there's like a sand skirt. And we generally call that the skirt. And that's where the sand-sized stuff is. The higher stuff that can go up kilometers is very fine.
Some have a very clear core. Some have no core. Some look ropey. Others are very clear cylinders within cylinders within cylinders. There's layers of dust. There's layers of dirt spinning around, all vertical cylinder layers. It's very interesting. Some have ejecta skirts of debris and dust and mud flakes out the base. Some are very gently wafting you. Others just bombard you.
But under attack, they fight back with a special souped-up boy's toy called
the Desert Surface Thermal Buoyancy Nadir Experiment, or Dust Bunny. And it's allowed us to get in and out of dust devils repeatedly and sample the pressure, which is a crucial thing we need to measure. And by getting into it and sampling that pressure, even with this rig's mobility, I'm often missing the direct core, and it takes a certain amount of luck and tenacity. So if you just keep going back and forth, that little instrument package, taking pictures, it's getting GPS altimeter data, it's really turning out to be a very helpful little unit. There we go, we got it. Sweet. Well, do you want to get the computer out? We can download this right now. The only problem is it's a little fragile, so we have to be careful when we're driving it. At the center of every dust devil appears to be a low-pressure core. And some people think that low-pressure core can help to suck up extra dust as well as the swirling winds. There's like a suction effect as well. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to prove that one way or another. Hopefully this will help us do that. This puppy's holding up, isn't it? Yeah, it's doing all right.
On Earth, dust devils range from puny spinners a meter wide to their big brothers 100 meters in diameter. But on Mars, they can be 5 times as wide and tower 8 kilometers high.
That's a pretty good one. That's a good one.
Then the team spots an infant that they reckon is poised to grow into a giant.
That's a big boy.
And Metzger finds himself facing the biggest dust devil he's ever encountered. A monster dust devil of Martian-like proportions advancing to battle NASA in the Mojave Desert. This one could hold all the secrets they seek.
This dust devil is very intense. It's really amazing. Look at this thing.
Oh, I'm still in it. That was wild. Did you see that thing? That was intense. That was the most intense dust devil I've seen. It was like flinging tons of stuff. It was totally dark brown inside there. It was amazing. It was like dark brown. So it was intense.
On this field trip, we've managed to get some thermal images of dust devils, and this is really exciting. We've got images from the air and images from the ground. We can see the core of the dust devil really well defined. We can see the structure perfectly. When we get back to the lab, start analyzing these data, I think it will tell us a lot about how dust devils form.
My God, I can't see anything. That was fantastic.
Dust can turn up the heat in the Martian atmosphere by up to 30 degrees Celsius. This could be a clue to why Martian dust storms grow so big. The hot air rushes to colder regions, generating winds that stir even more dust. A self-sustaining cycle. On Earth, water is a coolant, helping stop dust from turning up the temperature. But our dust storms can still travel enormous distances. In the mid-1990s, a NASA team were mapping the Earth's ozone layer. As an experiment, they retuned their satellites to focus on fine dust particles in the Earth's atmosphere. They were surprised by the sight of a gigantic cloud of dust, 700 kilometers across, heading straight for the Americas out of Africa. The Martian dust storm that's playing out on Earth is also leaving Africa. Some of the dust traveling north from the Sahara into Europe, and some of it west across the Atlantic. As it crosses the ocean, it blocks out sunlight that could warm the waters to a hurricane heat. And it's no coincidence that years with lots of dust storms are also years with fewer hurricanes. That's a good thing for air travel, but dust storms can bring their own problems. Because if a hurricane is just starting to churn above the ocean, when a dust storm arrives on the scene, they can collide.
没想到可以买新车。
That down for you. Sorry. Apologize for that.
The dense, swirling cloud of ultrafine dust particles is in super dry air that crackles with static. The huge superheated hurricane wind is full of moisture and pumped with energy.
I just asked them to strap in, because I don't know how bad it's going to get. Thanks.
Two weather super systems in a frightening standoff. One will be eliminated.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going through some turbulence, some light turbulence. Okay, everybody keep seated, keep seated. Seatbelts on, fasten your seatbelts. Okay. Seatbelts on, seatbelts on.
This time it's the dust storm that wins, suffocating a smaller, less developed hurricane, then moving on.
Everything's gonna be fine. Keep your seatbelts on.
Dust storms on Mars and Earth can have global reach and influence the weather. But on Earth, they also affect life itself. In Florida, the stunning sunsets caused by airborne dust are a vivid warning that the asthma and allergy season is about to hit. The cause links back to Darwin's Dust and to the Alpine laboratory where William Broughton has written an amazing footnote to one of the most famous expeditions in history. High in the Swiss Alps near Geneva, a glassy underground labyrinth has been carved out of the mountain. It's a scientific ice palace that houses a very special collection of dust. African dust that once fell on the snowy mountains of Switzerland is now trapped deep underground.
Ah, Felix, this is the layer you were telling me about, no?
Yes, this is a layer of sawdust they put down in 1947, which was a very hot summer. So they used this sawdust to protect the glacier from melting away too fast.
The sawdust layer marks the surface of the glacier in the middle of the last century. It provides a base mark that enables scientists to date the dust layers around it.
That's 47, this layer is 48, this is 49, here we got 46, 45.
You can date your samples.
Broughton is a microbiologist, a reanimator who sees potential life in dust.
This dust that was trapped, first of all, on the surface of the glacier, and then as each new snowfall buried it further, the life in this dust has remained living and can be resurrected, reanimated using standard microbiological techniques.
Broughton's dust is frozen in ice, a kind of suspended animation. Particles from Africa trapped where they fell many years ago. But Broughton has obtained a sample of the dust collected by Darwin on the voyage of the Beagle. Dust kept in a glass capsule with handwritten notes. The dust was collected in 1832, and Darwin later noted it carried microbes. Now Broughton wants to know if they're still alive.
First of all, getting dust that Darwin himself had collected was exciting. I mean, it's theoretically possible that there's some of Darwin's DNA in this dust, right? Second, when you have the dust and you're able to show that it contains lots of different living things, for scientists, this is as good as it gets.
Broughton and his colleagues are able to confirm Darwin's hunch that his dust came from the Sahara. But their forensic fingerprinting goes further and pinpoints the dust source as the Bodele Depression, over 4,000 kilometers distant from the Beagle.
Sterilize the filter.
And then they find something even more amazing. There are microbes still living in the dust that Broughton is awakening.
We like to call the microbes as hitchhikers on dust that is carried from continent to continent. And they land again, for example, in the Amazon, often in rain. And they germinate on soil or on leaves or wherever they do, and start a new life cycle in a new place.
Darwin believed a species originated in a single place, then spread as far as it could by any means. His dust is evidence of one of them.
I've never thought of dust as being inanimate. There's life in Darwin's dust that means, in one sense, very little has changed over centuries.
Our Martian dust storm, teeming with microbes from Africa, is rapidly spreading, closing in on North America. On the ground, it's brownout, a fog of dust and sand obscuring visibility, nightmare for vehicles. High in the atmosphere, the particles are smaller, lighter, as fine as cigarette smoke. All invasive.
That's terrible. That's really bad.
A serious threat to any craft in the air. The dust storm that beats a hurricane must be bigger and more powerful than its foe. Its winds are racing at 160 kilometers an hour. Super dry air sucking up solar energy, fizzing with static, discharging electricity into everything in its path. An enemy that's invisible until it invades, by which time it's too late. Dust destroys technology. A nightmare waiting to happen on a manned mission to Mars. NASA is spending millions preparing for human exploration of space. Technology that can be tested in dust storms on Earth. No one takes the dangers more seriously than Pascal Lee. Lee is the chairman of the Mars Institute. He's a planetary scientist at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute.
Traverse planning meeting.
And director of NASA's Mars project in the Canadian High Arctic. His lifelong quest has been to prepare for human exploration of the Red Planet, a journey he'd like to be on himself, if his canine companion can go with him.
Ping Pong is my dog, and she's an incredible life form. If somehow I had a chance to go to Mars, one of my first thoughts would be, well, would I be able to go with Ping Pong?
Humans have long been fascinated by life on Mars, but Lee's mission is to protect us from it by keeping out the dust that could be carrying it. He's testing a new spacesuit that NASA hopes will withstand a dust storm, whether it's on Mars or Earth.
The thing about expeditions is that they're won before they happen. They're won in the preparation stage. They're won when you retire risk. And what we're doing here is part of retiring risk. We're trying to understand the types of obstacles that humans will encounter and find solutions to mitigate against these dangers.
Martian dust is powder fine, abrasive and irritant. It's potentially highly dangerous, likely toxic, and the strong oxides it's thought to contain would burn the skin like bleach.
What we're interested in here is to understand the impact that dust could have in our ability to explore Mars safely and productively.
Lee hopes this could be the answer. NDX-1, a prototype Martian spacesuit designed by researchers at the University of North Dakota. It's the only one in existence, and it's about to be tested in a unique experiment.
Today's test is to look at what happens to a pressurized spacesuit when it is subjected to a dust devil, be it on the Earth or on Mars. And what we'll be looking for is how and whether dust grains adhere to the surface of the materials that we have on the spacesuit, and also whether this dust infiltrates the suit itself.
As a child, Lee dreamed of space travel to Mars. This baptism of dust marks another step on the way.
Feels like a very tight dishwashing glove all over your body. Very rubbery inside, but it's a snug feel. The whole body's comfortable here, but the fingertips are hard to match up as you insert it like this. It's a little bit toasty in here, but it's fine.
If you're ready, we can get you with the helmet and pressure the suit, and then what we'll do is get you the backpack, and we'll be ready to go.
Okay.
The vortex awaits. But that isn't the only test the NDX-1 must face. The NASA-funded prototype Martian spacesuit is given a substitute astronaut before it's subjected to an extreme earthly dust storm in a specially designed wind tunnel. A stream of intense particles batters the prototype as the scientists watch in the hope that their suit will protect and defend. The team simulates the irritating dust of the storm with finely ground walnut shells and fuller's earth, better known as kitty litter.
I'm almost complete loss of visibility here.
Martian dust is as fine as talcum powder, potentially deadly if inhaled, building up static and challenging the tightest seams.
I was just amazed by the dynamics that was going on here, the intricacies of the vortices, of the eddies that were picking up this loose material on the ground. Looking up into this column of dust was just, you know, amazing.
Lee is happy with his mission, but after the mannequin's air tunnel test, the NASA scientists make a sobering discovery.
We can see dust in the joints. That's really the spacesuit maintenance nightmare. So what would you guys say is your first initial conclusion?
I think the bad news is as much dust as got through here. I'm a little worried that in time, this could grind into the fabric. It looks to me like I said, like quite a bit got through, infiltrated through the blue layer.
Should be quite a bit of dust still inside the arm.
Dust wins again. The mission must continue. NASA knows the challenges from past experience. The men who went to the moon were plagued by lunar dust that attacked their layers of boots and suits, invaded living quarters, and irritated their eyes and lungs. At least one astronaut came down with a bad case of lunar hay fever. The alien dust was something none of them would forget. For Buzz Aldrin, those memories are vivid. Aldrin is one of the first and few to walk on alien soil. For a couple of hours on a day in July 1969, Aldrin took a stroll on the moon with fellow astronaut Neil Armstrong, and what he found underfoot was like nothing he'd ever seen before. But it did have a familiar scent.
It had an odor, burnt charcoal, like a fireplace. It was very fine, and of course, it left a very remarkable print of our boots. And it behaved in a way that just something I'd never seen before. You put your foot down, and as you do, you displace, and it all leaves at about the same angle. And it all goes out, and then it all lands in a semicircle. It doesn't do that here.
Remember the old films, and you see them, the guys walking on the moon, and you see them bouncing around and so forth.
Well, I was doing that. I was horse-wrapped. One foot after another, and then I tried the kangaroo hop.
It may look like an unlikely partnership, but Dale Griffin is a microbiologist with the US Geological Survey, and Aldrin is helping him hunt for the Sahara under the Caribbean Sea.
All right, we're ready.
Coral here is dying, under attack from some form of microbe. Griffin believes it's carried on the wind, in dust.
Stand up. I appreciate the macro impacts that the micro world can have through the transportation systems that the climate has in the way of atmospheric wind transport.
For Aldrin, being underwater is second nature. He prepared for weightlessness in space by training underwater.
In an inflated pressure suit, astronaut Edwin Aldrin, pilot for Gemini 12, is weighted with 60 pounds of lead. He is positioned at the prepared Agena workstation by trained scuba divers.
Today, he's more aquanaut than astronaut, and finds that water doesn't stick like dust.
What we're trying to do is match like species of bacteria, fungi, and viruses. So we're trying to show links between what's in the atmosphere when African dust is present and what may be on the surface of these corals.
Coral reefs all over the world are in crisis. the victims of pollution and other forms of human activity. Griffin believes he's on the trail of another killer, virulent strains of microbes hitching a ride on seasonal dust falls. Coral has a sticky layer of mucus on its surface that traps particles and microorganisms in the water.
See that buzz? How it's broken down, all that tissue loss there? But obviously he's infected. What we're looking for are, where do they come from? These clouds of dust that come over from Africa in the summer impact the entire Caribbean. That about 20 to 30% of the organisms we find in the atmosphere when African dust is present are pathogens, known pathogens of some type of microorganism. Those phenomena has global scale consequences. So I'm going to grab a piece of tissue on this disease tissue right here.
I can't resist using the phrase ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Wherever we find it, we better understand how it got there and what is going to cause it, because it's a transported item that's going to move things, good or bad, from one place to another.
Lab analysis of Griffith's samples confirms that a fungus commonly transported in dust is infecting the diseased coral. It's a fungus he's seen before, in dust from Africa. A Martian dust storm that started in an African valley is about to hit the eastern seaboard of America. Dust devils are already stalking Manhattan, filling the streets, dwarfing skyscrapers, stretching to the horizon in every direction. But for many, still going about their everyday business, the storm strikes without warning. The approaching wind is whipping up the dust that sandblasts everything in its path. The dust sears flesh like bleach. Winds howl 160 kilometers an hour. Soon it will be impossible to breathe. There is nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. An earthly dust storm can last for days. But a Martian storm lasts for weeks or months. Pascal Lee is the man who's tasked with equipping us to deal with it. A man who's most at home in the extreme environments of Earth. Like his base at Devon Island's Horton Crater, a polar desert in the high Arctic. A barren, freeze-dried Martian landscape formed by a meteorite impact 39 million years ago. Lee is on an expedition with a prototype spacesuit and a proof-of-concept Humvee, designed to test the limits of Mars exploration. But nothing NASA does is ever easy. When NASA astronauts make it to Mars, they'll face many problems. But this equipment test in the high Arctic has hit one that won't exist: water and mud.
We were trying to avoid making deep tracks on the trail by driving on the creek bed, but turns out the creek bed was pretty soggy. So we got stuck, and somehow there's no more traction on either of the tires. All four have lost traction here, and hopefully we'll make it back home for dinner. Let's try this. Any action? Nothing.
The Humvee is more than 3.5 tons of technology-packed metal and is challenging the team's pulling power.
You want to try this? No, huh? We're just going to dig a little trench and bury this deeper.
An incident like this on Mars could be the end of an expensive expedition.
That's what a winch is for. You sort of come prepared with the right gear. There are a number of options that you can consider. We usually try the lazy ones first, and then it looks like the hard way is inescapable.
But after 3 hours, they're up and running again.
So we don't have much room in this place. You got to keep everything well organized. These two doors will remain connected so that the dust that is on the back of your backpack or on the outside here of your wall will always remain confined and sealed inside, and so your interior environment will not become contaminated with Martian dust.
And you slide into your suit gently, legs first. Find a way to catch the boots.
Slide your second sleeve. I'm going to close this double back door and go on EVA. See you later.
The kit has been evolved from biohazard suits. Lee has to test it for ease of use. This is the first time he's taken it out for a walk.
When you explore a hostile environment, what you try to do is be prepared. You always try to plan things. And so the enemy of expeditioning is the unpredictable. Dust storms are in that category. It's a fantastic weather phenomenon. And it's really important that we understand why they take place on Mars and how they come about. Not just for the sake of understanding Mars, but for the sake of understanding how such a thing might happen on the Earth if conditions changed. And so this is about a multi-planetary approach to understanding weather phenomena, not just focusing on the Earth, but looking at other worlds.
There we go. Snake your way out of this thing. Bend over backwards with the space program and to get out of the suit. No amount of engineering can fix a bad concept, so this is why we do all this work. And this EVA went really well. I'm only covered in sweat, no dust though.
A journey to Mars, in many ways, is sort of the mother of all camping trips. It's the mother of all exploring expeditions.
But it wouldn't take much to turn it into the vacation from hell. And scientists are not yet able to protect a Mars mission from the deadly threat of its dust. And if we're not ready to go to Mars, we're certainly not prepared for Mars to come to us. Our Martian dust storm is racing at almost 160 kilometers an hour. A wave of dust 40 kilometers high that hits like a freight train, consuming our world for weeks or months. The sun is obscured. Technology fails. Crops die. And so do millions of people. Survivors left to face disease and pandemics. But this is just the beginning. months of Martian storms leave meters of dust covering our world, changing our landscape. A monstrous Martian dust storm could return over and over again, growing to bury the Earth, spreading confusion and fear for our future. But from an unlikely and inhospitable place comes hope. In one of the driest deserts on Earth, there is an amazing story of survival. The core of the Atakama Desert of Chile is thought to be shockingly similar to the surface of Mars. Save for a blue sky, this looks just like the view from the Mars Spirit rover. This desert, with its giant boulders and smaller rocks, is over 10 million years old. Much of this landscape is made up of salt deposits and coarse sand, formed from volcanic rock over many millennia. The Atakama is a sandy wasteland, a virtual dead zone in its most arid regions.
There's absolutely no life around you. You can spend weeks and weeks roaming in the Atakama Desert and you will not see any green.
Scientists come to study the limits of life in a place where none has ever been found. There are stretches here where rain has never been recorded.
For us, for many scientists, the most important reason is to know the limit of life in our planet.
Jacek Virchow is a space chemist from Spain. He made his first visit to this desert in 2005, and on his first day, he took a walk, broke open a piece of halite rock, and made a shocking discovery.
Always in these extreme places we can find some forms of life.
He found a very curious deposits, which are basically halite deposits, salt deposits, and they were sitting right on the surface. And with his hammer, he went there and he cracked one of them open. And to his surprise, he saw that inside this halite, inside this salt, there was actually plenty of life.
The rock contained living cells, microbes thriving inside the salt rock. Virchow tested more and more rocks. They were all colonized by primitive, unicellular organisms. He had discovered a vast, unknown, hidden habitat.
In the Atakama Desert, most dry place in our planet, we have halite. This halite is colonized.
The porous halite had absorbed the tiny amount of water vapor from the air, moisture that was supporting life.
The fact that there is so much life in the halite and in the gypsum is telling us a fundamental thing about extreme dryness. It's telling us that life can adapt to these conditions. Microorganisms were the first ones to arrive, more than 3.5 billion years ago. And some of these microorganisms are still here. Everything you can throw at them, they've been able to survive it. And I think these little guys deserve a lot of respect. When you go to the Atakama, you see no life anywhere. You don't see trees, you don't see bushes or grass or anything. But then you take the halite and you put it under your microscope and suddenly you see like a rainforest.
Our deserts may compare to Mars, but the dust storms that roam them will never bury the Earth. The oceans of our small blue planet will not permit a dust storm on a Martian scale. Water that offers us protection and also gives us life. Life that will survive a storm against all odds. Ashes to ashes, earth to earth, dust to dust. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return, until it starts again.